What if Google Drive, Wikipedia, every science journal, every textbook, every podcast, every research paper, and every TikTok tutorial all vanish overnight? That's exactly what happened almost 2,000 years ago, when the most advanced knowledge vault on Earth went up in flames. They called it the Library of Alexandria. But in simple terms, it was the ancient Google Drive, the one place where humanity tried to store everything we knew about math, medicine, philosophy, astronomy, and more. At its peak, the library held up to 700,000 scrolls. We used their math in classrooms. Their science laid the groundwork for maps, machines, and medicine. But that's just a tiny glimpse of what was there. If nothing had burned, we might have had planes in the Renaissance or landed on Mars by now. But then, it burned, and we lost everything. Welcome to The Real Central. I'm your host, Josh Pultam, and this is the place where we dive into the most unique and unexpected stories from all around the world. If it's strange, surprising, or just dumb or fascinating, we're talking about it here. We are a new channel, so please subscribe to our channel and comment anything down below to push our channel higher. Thank you so much, guys. Let's continue to the video. To understand why the Library of Alexandria mattered so much, we have to go back, way back, to 331 BC. Alexander the Great had just founded the city of Alexandria in Egypt. His goal? To create a shining center of Greek culture in Africa. But after his sudden demise, the real builders of Alexandria were his successors, the Ptolemaic dynasty. The Ptolemies had one big ambition. Let's collect every piece of human knowledge ever written and store it in one place. Under King Ptolemy I, and especially his son Ptolemy II, this vision became real. They built a massive complex called the Mausoleum, part university, part temple, part research lab. And inside it, they created the Library of Alexandria. The library had one job: collect everything. Any scroll found on incoming ships, copied and kept. Books for sale in Athens or Babylon, bought instantly. Anything in any language, translated into Greek. Their motto could have been, "If it's written, we want it." The rulers of Alexandria wanted their city to be the brain of the ancient world, smarter than Athens, bigger than Babylon, and more connected than Rome. And they made it happen by offering the first research fellowships in history. Scholars from all over were invited to live in Alexandria. Free housing, free food, no taxes. All they had to do was think, write, and research. This was the start of the first real knowledge economy, and Alexandria was its capital. But just how far did Alexandria's genius go? What kind of ideas were they cooking up inside those marble halls? From Earth-size math to steam power machines, the minds inside the library weren't just smart, they were centuries ahead of their time. At its peak, the Library of Alexandria was not just a storage for scrolls. It was the ancient world's greatest engine of ideas. Inside the Mausoleum, a scholarly campus funded by the state, thinkers from every culture came together to read, argue, invent, and discover. With hundreds of thousands of scrolls collected from ships, book fairs, and far-off kingdoms, Alexandria became the first city in history to gather global knowledge in one place. And what came out of this group of smart people was amazing. Euclid wrote a math book called Elements that became the base of geometry for the next 2,000 years. Eratosthenes, the head of the library, was one of the first people to try to measure the size of the Earth and make world maps. Archimedes, who lived in another city, probably visited and shared big ideas about physics and how to move heavy things. At a time when most of the world still believed the heart was the center of thought, two Alexandrian doctors, Herophilus and Erasistratus, conducted actual human dissections. They discovered the brain's function, distinguished between arteries and nerves, and described the pulse and heart valves centuries before Galen. It was the birth of modern anatomy, hidden in scrolls now lost. And what about editing and peer review? That started in Alexandria too. Librarians like Aristarchus of Samothrace weren't just organizing scrolls. they were checking them. He reviewed Homer's Iliad, flagged fake verses, and built the first system of scholarly punctuation. His method of comparing texts became the basis for how we edit and verify knowledge today. Finally, this wasn't just a place of ideas, it was a workshop of invention. Ctesibius built precise water clocks, hydraulic pumps, and the world's first keyboard instrument. Then, Hero of Alexandria made early machines, like a simple steam engine, long before they were common, and Aristarchus was brave enough to say that the sun is in the center and the earth moves around it, an idea people ignored for centuries, even though he was right. But Alexandria wasn't just a science lab, it was the birthplace of textual criticism and editing. Scholars like Aristarchus of Samothrace compared versions of the Iliad, spotting fakes and marking them with an obelus, a technique that evolved into modern peer review. Medical scholars began pushing boundaries too, conducting early human dissections and documenting the body in ways unheard of in their time. Translators turned the Hebrew Bible into Greek in a version known as the Septuagint, setting a precedent for multi-language scholarship. And all of this happened in an environment free from religious censorship, driven by curiosity and collaboration. In short, Alexandria wasn't just where knowledge lived, it was where the future was invented. It was a golden age of knowledge, creativity, and fearless curiosity. But no empire and no library lasts forever. The same place that gave birth to genius would soon become battlefield of politics, fire, and silence. So, how does the smartest place on earth disappear without a trace? For centuries, the Library of Alexandria stood as a symbol of human genius, but its downfall wasn't a single fire. It was a slow collapse, stretched across centuries. The decline began in 145 BC when King Ptolemy VIII turned on scholars and cut their funding. Alexandria's brainpower started to drain. Then came Julius Caesar's invasion in 48 BC. His troops set fire to ships in the harbor, and the flames spread to nearby scroll warehouses. Some say up to 40,000 scrolls were lost. The main library may have survived, but only for a while. More blows followed. In the 3rd century AD, civil war tore through the city. By the late 200s, the library likely no longer existed as a true institution. Then, in 391 AD, a Christian mob destroyed the Serapeum, a temple that housed one of Alexandria's last remaining book collections. And in 415, Hypatia, a brilliant philosopher and one of Alexandria's final lights, was killed by a religious mob. No one villain destroyed the Library of Alexandria. It was politics, religion, war, neglect. And in the end, we didn't just lose scrolls. We lost a future that might have looked very, very different. We lost head starts on space, on medicine, on machines that could have powered the world centuries earlier. But not everything disappeared. Some of that genius still echoes through your life today, even if you have never heard the names behind it.
Tolerance, respect for science and for the contrarian view. All of these values are values that have lived with us to this day.
The tragedy of the Library of Alexandria isn't just that books burn, it's what burned. Some of the most astonishing discoveries in science, math, medicine, and engineering were born in Alexandria. And the fact that we only know a few of them, thanks to scattered mentions and lucky copies, makes the loss feel even heavier. Take Eratosthenes. In 240 BC, he figured out the circumference of the Earth using a stick, a shadow, a well, and geometry. His estimate? Around 40,000 kilometers, less than 1% off from modern measurements. This wasn't just trivia. His method laid the groundwork for global mapping, coordinates, and eventually navigation and systems. Or Aristarchus, who proposed something that sounded insane at the time, that the Earth revolves around the Sun. This heliocentric model was ignored for 1800 years until Copernicus revived it, but the idea started in Alexandria. Imagine how astronomy might have advanced if people had just listened. Inside those marble halls, Euclid wrote Elements, the most influential math textbook in history. He built logic itself, starting with definitions and axioms, then built hundreds of theorems. His work was so powerful that scientists from Galileo to Einstein considered it essential reading. So what did we really lose when Alexandria fell? We lost maps before satellites, anatomy before X-rays, physics before engines, and a version of science that was centuries ahead of its time. These few stories, they're just the survivors, scraps of genius rescued by luck. But what if the other hundreds of thousands of scrolls had made it too? How far ahead would we be? The scrolls may be gone, but their fingerprints are still all over our world, from classrooms to code, from search bar to satellites. What started in Alexandria didn't end in flames. It simply changed form. So how does a 2,000-year-old dream still shape the way we learn today? Even though the original Library of Alexandria is long gone, its spirit is everywhere in how we build libraries, design universities, and share knowledge across cultures. The techniques pioneered in Alexandria, from book cataloging and peer review to translation and editing, are now baked into how we teach and learn today. Alexandria proved that when smart people are given space, support, and access to information, they can change the world. And here's the challenge we face now. We live in a time of unlimited information, but rising threats to truth, fake news, data rot, censorship. Alexandria's story is our warning. Knowledge can vanish fast if we don't protect it. But it's also a message of resilience, because even when scrolls are lost, the spark of curiosity can still survive. If you like this video and want to see more deep dives into more unique content, don't forget to subscribe. We've got more sooner coming or later. I'm your host, Josh Gautam. Thank you so much guys for watching. Goodbye.